What is going on, my passionate Pokemon players? We are back with yet another episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. Today, proud to go through our next deck, which is another one from our original 150 Pokemon that I like to call annoyingly acidic Arbok. So this one is going to be a lot of fun, a little bit different than the last couple decks I've gone through with our original starters. This one's a little bit more of a control disruption deck, but I'm excited to get through it. Before we start, of course, please, if you want to join the Hawk's Nest, hit that subscribe button. If you're not quite ready to fly yet, just give me a like and leave a comment. Share with your friends, and then maybe you'll want to join in the Hawk's Nest. Everybody's welcome. It's a large nest, and we can fit everybody in here. So let's help to grow this nest and bring everyone along for the ride so that we can fly. But without further ado, let's get into the deck. Right, and of course, it is called Annoyingly Acidic Arbok. So we're going to have 4 Ekans in the deck. I like this one, which is the 70 HP Ekans. As you know, I like to go above 60 when I can. It does have 2 retreat costs, which is a little annoying. And then it has Acid Spray, which is going to do 30. Flip a coin. If heads, then they discard an energy. So a little bit of disruption there, if possible. Really, it's not a move you're wanting to do. It's really an emergency. You want to keep your Arbok on the bench. Or your Ekans on the bench until you're able to get him out there attacking. Now here's what this deck is revolving around. First off, what an awesome card. I really love the purples and the greens here, really acidic in the background. Really nice card from 151. One that I've been really trying to get a deck for quite some time, and again, here we are in a position where I feel like this is a decently competitive deck. I've used it and have gotten some wins on TCG live with. So anyway, what is this card about? So Arbok Ex, it's got 270 HP, so not the best, but it can usually take at least 1 hit, so keep that in mind. And then it's got a couple moves that are kind of interesting here. So we've got Bind Down, which only deals 70 for 2 dark energy, but the defending Pokemon can't retreat next turn, so can help. But you know, a lot of people are playing switch cards and things like that, but can come in handy. But really what we want to do is Menacing Fangs. So Menacing Fangs is going to allow us to not just deal 150, but your opponent discards 2 cards from their hand. They choose what those 2 cards are, but if we're going to see as we get through here, hopefully we're going to be having them kind of get down to very small or very zero hand. Very zero. I mean, there's 0 in there, and then there's not. So anyway, let's move on. Alright, so coming back over here, we have Radiant Greninja. We need a draw engine here, and so the Radiant Greninja is just going to be our best draw engine. As we're going to see later, we do have some dark patches, so we're able to get those energies and utilize to help us actually load up Arbok, which does need 3 energy for its main attack, so can take some time to load up if we're not careful. Now, what really helped make this deck more competitive, first I'll skip that one, we're going to go over the Pecharunt EX. So the Pecharunt EX does a couple things, helps us be able to move in and out of the active spot. You know, as we will see, the Arbok can only take a couple hits, and it has 2 retreat costs, including an Ekans that could potentially get stuck in the active spot. Right, so the Pecharunt's going to allow us to use Subjugating Chains to move Pokemon in and out of that active spot. So I'm playing with 2 of those. As we know, we have 4 Ekans for Arbok. We're going to go with 4 Pecharunt EX so that we're usually able to at least get 1 of them. We don't need more than 1 on the bench at one time. So that's good. Then I threw in 1 Pheasantipity EX. It's not one I want attacking a lot of times, but it does have the Cruel Arrow, which does 100 damage to any of your opponent's Pokemon if they don't have bench protection. Can be pretty good for us. And then what I really like to keep on the bench for is Flip the Script. That way I can draw 3 cards if anyone's knocked out. As we know, Radiant Greninja is really the only, well, not as we know yet, but you all will know. That's the best way to get our draw engine out there, because we don't have anything else that's really reliable. So that can let us get draw 3 if a Pokemon is knocked out. Right, so that's pretty much all the Pokemon. Only a few in this deck, but we don't need many more, and we don't really want many more. So let's go ahead and think about what the trainer cards are. For trainer cards, what deck these days is not going to be flooded with Buddy Buddy Poffins? I actually only have 2, though, in this deck. I'm playing 2 Buddy Buddy Poffins. Hopefully it's enough, but then later on in the list, as we'll see, I'll just go right to it now. Nest balls. I'm going 3 nest balls. Now, the reason for that is I want to get my Pecharunt out. I want to be able to get Pheasantipity. I don't oftentimes need too many Arboks out there. I mean, Ekans. So I think 3 nest balls and 2 Poffins seems to be a good sweet spot for me, right? Then we have 4 Dark Patch, as I'm using my Radiant Greninja as a draw engine. We're going to be discarding those energies a lot, so we really want to be able to get them back using the Dark Patch and really attaching them to the Ekans so that we in Arbok so that we can get them into the active spot and ready to use that ability. Then, of course, Earthen Vessel. We want those energies in hand. I'm going to go with 4 Earthen Vessels here because we really want to have energy available for Radiant Greninja. And then we also want to be able to attach an energy per turn and then make sure that we have enough, right? So 4 of those also helps out with your deck thinning. We went over nest balls. Night Stretcher, that one's another key one here. Really helped this deck when Night Stretcher came out. We're going to be able to get a basic energy or Pokemon from discard into hand. So that's going to help us if we need an energy, or maybe our Arbok was KO'd. We don't have our next one, but a lot of times you're already loading up your Ekans on your bench. You could just draw him up. Or, of course, in case anyone else gets knocked out, like your Pecharunt, like your Pheasantipity, you can pull them back up. So, great card there. We really need 3 Night Stretchers I've got in this deck. Then, Prime Catcher. Now, I go back and forth a little bit in terms of, like, what do I like best here? I'm kind of on the fence between Prime Catcher and the Unfair Stamp. I may try both. I may not when we're doing the TCG live demo. What I like about Prime Catcher is of course you're going to be able to get your opponent's Pokemon out there. And with Pecharunt, like even if maybe you have your Arbok out in the active spot, but you want your opponent to get their Pokemon in, you can just boom, boom, throw anybody else out there in the active on your team, and then just use Pecharunt EX to poison them. Or maybe even they're not poisoned and you want them poisoned because of Binding Mochi, which we will go over later. All right, so I'm still on the fence. Like I said, Unfair Stamp seems like it could be an option here, but not sure. I think Prime Catcher is still a little bit better. All right, then Ultra Ball. We're going to go with 3 Ultra Balls. Make sure that we're able to pull out our Arboks, really. I mean, if in a pinch, you're going to use it on an Ekans, Pheasantipity, or Greninja. But a lot of times you're hoping to just use Nest Balls on those. But of course, Ultra Ball, get who you want. And sometimes you may even want to discard an energy for a Dark Patch too. So it just helps you out there. Boss's Orders. I'm only going 2 Boss's Orders, and really some of the logic behind that too is why I like the Prime Catcher, because it kind of serves as a third one. This one, as you see, there's a lot of supporters in this deck. Despite there being not a lot of Pokemon, we do have a lot of supporters, so there's just not a lot of room for bosses in there. So I've only got 2. Prime Catcher kind of acts as the third. Makes the consistency a little bit of an issue sometimes, but you know, that's okay. We know that this deck isn't hard hitting and we're disrupting, so if we can't boss who we need in there, that's life. All right, then Airy. So this one is another good one, so that we're just going to lock our opponent's hand. I really like playing Airy a lot. So they reveal, you discard up to 2 item cards. I'm discarding rare candies. I'm discarding all kinds of stuff. Whatever I'm finding, obviously, in there that's going to help them out. Earthen Vessel, switch cards. I really like discarding those switch cards because they're wanting to switch out their Pokemon. And that's just helping you reduce their hand size, right? Okay, then Iono. So this one's really great. This is how we're flipping the script, not just with Pheasantipity, but later in games, you're going to Iono your opponent. Once they're down to 2, 3 prize cards, you can Iono, get them down to 3 in hand, and then if you're hitting with Arbok, you're getting them down to 1 or 0 cards in hand, which can really mess them up and disrupt them late in the game. So this is kind of the key to this coming back in later matches. So Iono, I have 4 Ionos, and then of course sometimes you're going to be using those early in game to get out of your bad hands, right? However, this is another just super key card to the deck, which is Janine's Secret Art. We're getting 2 of our Dark or Shadow Pokemon. We can search for a basic energy and attach to up to 2. And then if they're in the active spot, then they're poisoned. So this is helping us load up our Arboks a lot faster. You can get them with 3 energy in 2 turns now, so that you can just get them ready to go and ready to attack, and additionally have your next one ready to go. In an ideal world, we're putting them on both an Ekans/Arbok, but occasionally you may want to throw one on a Pecharunt or a Pheasantipede if you don't have anything else going. Sometimes you want to consider it. This deck does play with 10 energies, and Arbok needs 3. So you want to think about, like, do I always want to put one on a Pecharunt? And remember that you can get them out of the active spot. So we don't really need to think about energy for retreating unless you somehow lose both Pecharunts and have no way of getting them back. But Janine's Secret Art, this is a really great card, and what kind of built this deck along with the Pecharunt and made it competitive. Although, here's our last one here, which is the Binding Mochi. Now, one of the biggest issues with that Arbok is it's only hitting for 150. Especially now we're dealing with a lot of these EX Stage 2 Pokemon that are 300 plus HP. So in those times, it can take you 3 turns to KO them. Well, with the Binding Mochi, now we're dealing 40 more damage as long as we're poisoned. Super easy to do. You've got your Pecharunt, you've got your Janine's Secret Art, so we're going to be able to attach that Mochi and get him poisoned. I'm playing with 3 of them. I'd like to fit 4 in there, but doesn't really seem to work. I don't really want to eliminate other cards unless we want to think about maybe going 0 bosses and being a boss like that. We can put in a 4th Binding Mochi and maybe something else like another Night Stretcher, maybe another Poffin, probably not, maybe even another Airy. But I really like this Binding Mochi and where that kind of takes us. Even if, let's say, we're dealing 2 energies is only on our Arbok at this point, we're able to at least hit for 110 and not let them retreat. So good stuff there. Good stuff there. And then let's kind of go and have a look at our energy, as I mentioned. Actually, no, we have 12 energies. Yeah, I misspoke there. But that's okay, 12, and in fact, that's why I kind of thought there was 10, because I still find myself short energy sometimes, so that's why I would really keep the 12. If you want to maybe take a chance, add another Binding Mochi and a Night Stretcher, and go down to 10, that can maybe work, because you're able to pull those energies back if needed. I might consider it, but I kind of like the 12. Personally, I think I'll stick with that myself. And in terms of strategy, this one is super straightforward. As we see, we've only got 1 attacker, which is Arbok. In a pinch, we're able to use the Pheasantipede EX, but I really like to just kind of keep that bad boy on the bench. But Chaos, Chaos is the strategy here. This is a disruption deck. We want to get our Arboks out there, use Menacing Fangs, use Airy to handlock them once we are already loaded up, disrupt them from evolving their Pokemon, switching their Pokemon out, all that good stuff. And then from there, we just thin out our deck. This is a deck where I again, as many of mine, we want to thin this thing out so that we can get rid of what we don't need. Once you've got a couple Arboks loaded up, we can start discarding the ones that we don't need. Use those Ultra Balls, get them out of there, and then we're able to do that. Just really disrupt, because yeah, especially late in game, you're going to want to be using your Ionos, and if you're caught up, you don't want to handlock yourself, so just thin that deck out to where we don't really have anything remaining but what we need. Especially things like energies. Try to keep at least a couple energies in deck so that you can Greninja into getting your hand back up after you Iono yourself. strengths and weaknesses of this deck. The first thing is draw power is pretty much a strength of it. I mean, it's pretty easy to get your Radiant Greninja out there. You've got 12 energy there so that you're able to continue to draw as we go. Energies are decently easy to draw, and then as we're discarding them, we can just attach them, hopefully with Dark Patch. I mean, we've got 4 of them, and then Janine's Secret Art to continue to thin that out, and Fezandipity is allowing you to draw whenever one of your Pokemon gets knocked out, right? I mean, plenty of disruption in there with Airy, with Iono, with the Arbok itself, to really keep your opponent guessing. I used to have Crushing Hammers in there too. If you want, you can consider adding them back, which adds a little bit more disruption, but I found it was better to just double up on some of these trainer cards and do without, but you know, there's that. And it really gets stronger late. You know, the more you're going, the stronger it gets. As your deck's thinning, you're getting more of the cards that you need. You're able to Iono your opponent down and use those Arboks to get them down to potentially nothing in hand, to where they're just having to hope that they're top decking the right card. So that's pretty good, unless you're playing against somebody who's using like a Barrel or a Pidgeot or something like that. When that happens, you do want to consider trying to boss that Pidgeot up or Prime Catcher him up, which is going to take you a couple turns of it too, because obviously that Pidgeot, unless you want to just go with 70, 70, 70 until you hit to 280, which takes 4 turns, it's going to be able to retreat for free. So Pidgeots can give this deck some trouble sometimes, but a lot of times too, if you disrupt them enough, you know, yeah, they can quick search for any card, but that might be their second card in hand, and they need to combo that with something else. So that's where this comes in handy, right? Weaknesses, there's not a ton of damage here that we're doing, especially if they're able to keep you without your Binding Mochi. You know, then we're just hitting for 150, so it can sometimes take us a while to be able to get their Pokemon KO'd. And Arbok 2 isn't crazy in the HP, so a lot of times you might go like kind of 1 for 1, and it's up to who can kind of keep their bench ready to go quicker and disrupt more. So it can give you the advantage there, but thinking about that of like not a lot of damage, not a ton of HP, and then what a lot of times they're going to do after those 1 for 1s is bring up guys like Pecharunt EX. He can be a liability out there because he's only got 190 HP. Super easy to one-shot him, and really no way around that. So, you know, we can go there. And then Arbok being the own attacker and Arbok needing 3 energies can be tough sometimes if you're in a bad hand where you're not pulling those Dark Patches, you're not pulling the Janine's Secret Art or energies for that matter. You know, sometimes this deck can play really, really slow because we just don't have a lot to go off of here. So that can be an issue. Again, you can use Fezandipity to attack in a pinch, but we're dealing 100 damage with that Pokemon, unless you want to waste Binding Mochi and hit the active. It's just not ideal. So that can be an issue. So let's think about some alternate cards to consider here. I did throw in this Arbok from Temporal Forces. I kind of like it because for 1 energy, we can get them burned, confused, and poisoned. Something to consider as kind of alternate attackers. Then we have Darkness Fang that hits for 70, which you may as well just use your Arbok EX. I probably wouldn't put it in. This is probably just kind of one if you want to kind of have yourself some more options for evolving your Ekans in a pinch. Now this one is one to kind of consider, but would need a lot. You know, you'd need it to replace at least 6 cards because they're going to probably want 2 Hydreigon, 2 of the first ones, which I think is what it's. I don't even know what the heck the first form is. Is it the Dino? I think it is. But anyway, yeah, the Hydreigon would take 6. You'd need that the basic Pokemon, a couple rare candies, or the Zweilous, I guess, and then 2 of these. But it is an interesting idea because once during your turn, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck and attach energy to your Pokemon in any way you like. So it kind of can help you load up your Arboks quicker if you can get him out, but it kind of seems like more trouble than it's worth with 6 cards needing to be replaced in the deck. We're probably better off just kind of you're kind of doing things like discarding those energies and dark patching and just kind of going from there. But something to consider. If someone can make this one work, I'd like to see it. Let me know in the comments. Link me if you can, because Arbok and Hydreigon seem like there's some potential there, right? Now, this one is one I did try out and I thought might work, but I haven't been able to get it to work yet. And it can kind of maybe do something like either replace your Radiant Greninja or be in addition to, because we're using these Janine's Secret Arts so much. So as we're seeing the Shadowy Envoy from Crobat, if you play Janine's Secret Art from your hand during that turn, you can draw till you have 8 cards. So that's really going to help your hand, and especially in the opposite end where your opponent's hand is getting smaller, that gives you options. So you're able to kind of do that. But again, it's going to take 6 cards being replaced in this deck. What 6 do we want to replace to throw in Zubats, a couple rare candies, or potentially even a couple Golbats with a couple Crobats? I would like this one to work. In the same instance too, it can even act as a second attacker in a pinch. For only 2 energies, we're going to deal 120. And then we're poisoning them, and they're taking 20 damage instead of 10, or 2 damage counters instead of 1. So this is one I'd like to work, and especially as a lover of these old school Pokemon, Crobat I still throw in there in the really old schools, because Zubat is one of the OGs, right? So this one's one to kind of consider as well, right? Okie dokie EX, I mean, it's a dark Pokemon where we've got Pecharunt in there, we've got Binding Mochis, we've got Janine's Secret Arts. I mean, if we can get a Chain Crazed out there for 3 energy and deal 260, potentially even 300, because it's poisoned with a Binding Mochi, could be something good to go. But how to kind of fit that one in is a good question. I mean, maybe even just throwing 1 in, which could very well fit, and just kind of have him on the bench. And, you know, if you build him, you do. If you don't, you don't. And then the other thing is the poisonous musculature just helps you get him loaded up quick. So it's an option. You know, we are dealing some big damage, 300 in a turn with the Okie dokie, if you can get him loaded up. And if this is the case and you do put him in, it could be an option of potentially taking those 2 dark energies, throwing your other Binding Mochi in there, and then throwing 1 Okie dokie and just seeing if that works. So I kind of like this idea, and as I'm talking about it, I like it a little bit more now too. So think about it and see if we can get that working. Okay, so let's think about some trainers. I mentioned already the Unfair Stamp is something that I'm really considering. Help you get out of a bad hand. I definitely want to try this one when we're doing some online play and kind of see if that works over the Prime Catcher. Crushing Hammer, I mentioned, I used to play with 4 in this deck because it really helps with that disruption. Sometimes when you're not letting them retreat, earlier in the game, especially if we're hitting for 70, they can't retreat, and then just destroying some energy. They're just kind of stuck there sometimes. So that's nice, or even helping. I mean, it's discarding energy from any Pokemon, so they may be loading up on their bench, and then we can stop that. Kofu's one too. I find one thing I do find is sometimes I've got cards in my hand that I don't need, and I'm getting hand locked here. So the ability to put 2 of those cards at the bottom. Maybe I've already got 2 Arboks on my bench, and I've got a couple Ekans in hand or something like that. Then I can throw those on the bottom and then draw 4 cards. Interesting one, but like it's one where I'm questioning, what am I going to remove, right? Here's Lacey, another one to think about. If we want to go less disruption and more kind of helping you, then we can think about replacing Iono with Lacey, as we can at any point in time draw 4 cards, right? Shuffle and draw 4, and then if our opponent is down to 3 or fewer, we're able to get up to 8. So that can really help you switch things around late game. Just kind of thinking about the fact that you're not going to be able to put your opponent down to hand. So one there. Now Hyper Aroma is another good one that can really help you load up on your Arboks and just evolve them early in terms of an ace spec. I don't think it's good enough to replace Unfair Stamp or the Prime Catcher. You know, 3 stage 1s. Do you really even want 3 Arbok on your bench at once? So you may only be getting 2. It does help with thinning, but it's something to think about. But in this case, I don't think it's one to consider. But it is the only other A-Spec I'd probably think about using here. Hand Trimmer. This one's a good one. Again, too, you're going to be able to get some disruption there, get your opponent down to 5 cards in hand. Just something that I did have this one in the initial iteration of this deck too. Just didn't find it to work too well. It didn't hurt me a lot of times. It's easy for me to keep my hand to 5 and below. But it just wasn't working out a lot for me. I think just replacing other things was a lot better. Arven is an option too. We can grab our tool, which is obviously going to be our Binding Mochi, and then an item card that maybe something like the Earthen Vessel, Nest Ball, whatever. If you want to go a little bit less disruption, you can maybe replace Arven with the Aries so that you're making sure that you're in a good position rather than sometimes just having them discard an item card or 2 from hand, and then you're just sitting there not able to do anything. So Arven is one to think about over Airy, which would take away from the disruption, but also just give you a better chance of prepping your stuff to go. So consider that too. But that's kind of where I'm at in terms of considerations. But let me know in the comments what you think. How can we make this deck better and more competitive? What are we able to do? And there we are. We have seen what it is like to have our annoyingly acidic Arbok adventure of a deck. Added one more A. I love alliteration, and in case my viewers have not noticed yet, really like alliteration. So anyway, that's besides the point, but you have seen what our deck looks like. Make sure you tune in to the next video because we are going to put that deck in action on TCG Live. We will test out our annoyingly acidic Arbok deck, see if we can get some wins, see if we can keep things going, and continue our streak like last time with Venusaur. We had some really good play online. We were able to really do some good stuff there. So can we do the same? Will we encounter another Arbok deck? Another deck where I have not seen anyone else online with. So great stuff. Again, if you want to join the Hawk's Nest, make sure that you subscribe. Hit that subscribe button so that you can join our growing nest. If you're not quite ready to fly yet, just hit that like button. Leave a comment on what you thought. Share this with all of your Pokemon players around the world. And until then, I will see you next time.